Once upon a time, there were 3 women, and they worked for romance.
What's a woman's fantasy? I mean, ideally, from the time we're young, we're thinking about meeting Mr. Right, settling down, having a family, and just having, a happy relationship. This is across the board, whether you're Chinese, Indian, black, white, everybody wants the same kinds of things.
You make me dizzy when you take me on the floor. It's not your footwork or the fact you know the score.
Everybody, I think, believes in love to some extent or another. Some people kind of deny that they do, but that's probably because they've had bad experiences. But I believe in true love, so I think along with that comes the ability to write about it.
Oh yeah, you make me dizzy. I want you oh so much. You got me all in a tizzy. I can't resist.
I love taking these people and putting them through a lot of conflict and torturing them endlessly and then giving them that present of that their lives may not always be easy, but as long as they're together, they can get through it.
Anticipation running riot in my veins. I never thought I'd ever feel this way again. Our bodies moving to the sound, the rhythm of the beat.
Every year, romance fiction generates over $1 billion in sales. So besides brooding heroes and feisty heroines, what are the ingredients that make up this winning recipe?
A romance novel is a work of fiction that tells the story of the courtship and betrothal of one or more heroines.
And ends triumphantly, i.e., after all the challenges and struggles, the couple triumphs and achieves the great reward, which is the sort of bond that has a good chance of lasting.
But they all underneath deliver that message of the woman who wins.
On the page, romance novels all seem to have the same setup. Girl meets boy, they drive each other crazy, girl gets boy, and they live happily ever after. But read between the lines. These relationship stories are saying more than we might think.
I think they're quest stories. I really do think they're almost the opposite of Cinderella, where the prince goes out and gets what he wants, and Cinderella is his reward. Particularly in what's called women's fiction, much of which is romance. It's a woman struggling on her journey, and what happens is that she matures, so she becomes strong, and she deserves the relationship she gets at the end.
Let it be her desires for the hero that are thwarted somehow. Let it be her concerns, her point of view, her thoughts, her quest. And if you enact a courtship in that narrative, you're going to end up with a romance novel.
You see, Romeo and Juliet isn't a romance for sure, and what's more, I think it should have had a happy ending. Gone with the Wind isn't a romance, I mean, if it doesn't have the triumphant ending, as far as I'm concerned, it's sort of like a fantasy quest, where they have to defeat the great evil and capture the sword and save the world. If they don't, it's not much fun.
What can help your marriage?
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Dear, read page 62. Hint.
Looking for love, looking for romance, languid, deliciously hot, hot and steamy.
We had moved up here right after I graduated high school, and I was kind of separated from all my friends and, the town that I was familiar with. So I was pretty depressed, and I was just kind of walking around, and, I can't walk past a bookstore and not go in. But I'd basically just skipped out of the class I was supposed to be going to, and I went into the bookstore, and I was just kind of rummaging around looking for something to kind of cheer me up, I guess, and found the book. These 2 figures coming up out of the water, basically, and she was kind of in a soaked chemise, and he had on not a stitch, but you can really see him. But I thought just the image of it, I was like, whoa. because I'd never even picked up a historical romance before. And I flipped it over and I read the back cover, and the back cover, the story really intrigued me. I felt up to that point like my feelings were very deadened, and that was something that kind of perked me up and caught my interest and, you know, kind of made me feel something.
In the world of romance fiction, the cover has always generated hot debate. But whether you love them or leave them, they'll always be front and center.
Editors think that the cover is important because they know that they want people to be attracted to the book and to pick it up and to look at the text. And they want to signal the kind of book it is. So chick lit books have a certain kind of cover. They're cartoony, and historicals have another kind of cover. They're sort of soft focus and not a lot of clothes in evidence. The words inside are so much more important than the covers.
Covers are enormously important just because they sell the book.
Because honestly, a consumer has maybe 5 seconds, and that might be optimistic, to make a decision on whether she's going to take the book off the shelf and actually then flip it over and read the copy. If the author's a superstar, then it's the author name, of course, that's important. But for me, if you're kind of starting out, it's the cover, and then it's your title, and then you got to make sure that the copy is going to entice the reader.
Publishers put a lot of time and effort into turning out covers they hope will grab the attention of the book buyer. Some are hits, and some are misses. But it's all about trial and error.
There was a period where all covers had flowers on them because everybody was waking up to the fact that women read them and they weren't embarrassed to be reading it on the subway anymore. But everybody had flowers. And after a while, that wasn't telling the consumer enough about the book. So the process we go through with covers now is very author-specific. It's about the plot in the book. It's about the market we're trying to reach. And it's not just the image, it's the feeling of the cover.
And it's very hard, particularly when a writer is still establishing her market and her voice, to package well. A lot of times it's hit or miss. A lot of times writers will go through lots of different cover looks before they get one that clicks.
In terms of how people can break out of the mid-list, often it's a cover that will do it. So they're writing brilliant, brilliant prose. And they're getting dreary covers with some sad-looking ivy crawling up the left side, and the readers look at it and put it down, and that's unfortunate. But you get an, innovative, different cover, and suddenly a book is flying off the shelves.
Catherine Smith is a Regency historical author with Avon Books. Set in early 19th century England, Regency historicals are bursting with rakish rogues, longing ladies, and plenty of successful authors. Catherine falls somewhere in the mid-lists. That's why she's making a shift to another subgenre.
There are a lot of Regency romance authors out there, and they are wonderful, wonderful authors. But I was starting to feel like little fish, big pond. And it's so difficult to be fresh when you're writing in a subgenre that is that huge and that loved. So the jump to paranormal just gives me a whole new chance to try something new and really establish myself as somebody different and a different voice and not just another Regency historical author.
She hasn't really hit the bestseller list yet, and I'm hoping that with the paranormal element in her historicals that she will hit that list. That's our goal.
Hey, Kate. Good to see you.
I've been trying to think about how I want Catherine's book to be different from what's already on the shelves. It was just an image that I saw on the internet that really caught my eye. And our art director basically loved the idea and took it a couple of steps further into making it really, really stand out.
Here's the cover.
Oh my God!
Be mine tonight.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Don't you love it?
I love that font.
I love the monotone.
Oh, the blue.
Of the blue
and then I love how her lips, it's so flat, but then her lips have some shine to them.
She has a great expression. I just love his lips on her neck.
Yeah, because you don't know if he's just trying to kiss her there or if he's going to sink some fang in.
She's had a great fan base from writing historicals, and she didn't want to turn them away by, writing contemporary paranormals. I think it was great that she decided to marry the two themes. And you know what? This whole business is about taking risks, and you have to take that step at some point.
It's very important that I get that book into somebody's hands and that they look at it and make the decision to buy it based on the fact that it looks sexy and it looks interesting, but it fits all their criteria as a reader.
One sneak peek at the romance section will tell you, sex sells.
This is a joke in the office. We have one cover that has this cowboy on the cover leaning up against a car, and he is the sexiest guy anybody's ever seen. And we all talked about it, and then we found out he was a computer-generated image. He wasn't even a real guy.
But what is it about those hunky men on the covers that readers love?
Well, they sure love them better than covers showing women. It depends if you're a chest admirer or a butt admirer. I go for the chests. The hunky chests on covers of romance novels truly do help sell them. Butts are good too.
Alora's Cave knows a thing or two about selling a fantasy. The print-on-demand publishing house is known for its erotic romance, something they like to call romantica. What began as a modest online business in 2000 now sells over 80,000 books a month around the globe.
There was a cover last year, I think it was, Happy Birthday Baby was the book, and it's a man's torso, big chest, and he's holding a birthday cake strategically placed. But this book was on display, and I was standing to the side watching people, and they would go up and stroke the guy's chest on the cover. So whatever it is in us women, we just love those big pecs.
The popularity of erotica, sparked by Alora's Cave, seems to be catching, as powerhouse publishers have begun launching their own erotic fiction imprints. Harlequin Enterprises is among them. They're calling their new line Spice, and Kayla Perrin is one of the first authors on board. Kayla hopes her shift into erotica will be her way out of the African-American niche market and into the mainstream.
And I really hate to say it, but I think as a Black writer, there's just much more struggle for me. Because yes, my books might feature characters of color, but they're not exclusively for characters of color. It's one of the reasons that in my book, Getting Even, I decided to have 2 Black heroines as well as a white heroine. And interestingly enough, I had one publisher say, "Why is there a white girl in this book?" You would think that in this day and age, you just wouldn't get those kind of comments. I think they're absolutely absurd. And the one great thing about Harlequin, and maybe because they're in Toronto and it's a much more multicultural city than some of the U.S. cities, they said, "This is great. We love this. This is reality."
Oh yeah, you make me dizzy. I want you oh so much. You've got me all in a tizzy. I can't resist your strong and gentle touch.
But it was a new prospect when my agent submitted to Harlequin, and they said, "We love this book, we love the tone, it's got a good sexy tone, and maybe Kayla would be comfortable upping that, and we could put it in the launch for Spice." So I said, "I'm not stupid, Harlequin does fabulous launches. I want to grow my career," so I said yes to doing that.
She is really a very unique voice in that she is able to capture not only the African-American voice and experience, but in such a way that it appeals to non-African-American readers, which I think is maybe a bit of a problem with other AFAM writers, that they tend to be popular within the African-American community and have difficulty breaking out into other avenues. Another thing we tried to do, because your characters are Black and you have characters who are white, we did sort of a skin tone, a mocha, exactly. So it could be any of the characters, really squeezing that peach. We didn't want to direct it specifically one way to an African-American market and, maybe exclude the Caucasian market or...
So that was deliberate?
It was deliberate.
Good.
It was deliberate. With our packaging, we're doing a lot of really sophisticated, more subdued covers. We don't want women to be embarrassed buying these books in the stores. We don't want women to be embarrassed reading them in public. We don't want women to be embarrassed leaving them on their coffee tables for, their 5-year-old to see. It'll be very clean, very contemporary, and a little bit more sophisticated than the average erotic fiction novel.
I think if I stand out as the Black writer who, can really write these great stories in a mainstream way, I could probably get a lot more push from Harlequin. Because if I'm the only one, then I'll be the one that they push.
Even though they are, they have the major characters are Black, they're practically not all in Black.
I mean, I love Nora Roberts. I'm addicted to Nora Roberts, and I could care less that she's white.
Still a good story written about two people falling in love.
When most of us think of romance novels, Harlequin comes to mind. But the romance novel might be a lot older than you think. It's believed that Samuel Richardson wrote and published the first one in England in 1740. It was called Pamela.
It was a sensation in the modern sense. There was merchandise, there were translations, unauthorized sequels, stage adaptations, a series of oil paintings made of the heroine, and everybody had to read it. It was incendiary because a lady's maid resists her master's attempts to seduce her, and he marries her. So it's the servants getting uppity.
Then about 70 years later, along came a book that would inspire future generations of romance writers.
Pride and Prejudice is the best romance novel ever written, hands down. Austen managed in that work to perfectly blend the form and the content. And so what you have is an incredibly witty book. Sentence to sentence, it just glows on the page. And you have funny secondary characters and a hero to die for and a really smart heroine and a really great set of conflicts.
Fast forward about 150 years, when Harlequin, along with several other publishers, created a publishing phenomenon and the romance industry as we know it.
Jane Austen, put back on Earth, would read Harlequins. There's no question in my mind that she would do this. It would be the competition, partly.
In the beginning, the hero was probably 10 years older than the heroine and the richest man in the free world. She was probably orphaned and raised by an aunt and, of course, a virgin. Well, that has changed because we were American women and we're like, no, that's not my fantasy. My fantasy is more like we're partners and I have a career. He doesn't have to be the patriarch. I don't want a daddy.
But it seems that no matter what era, romance fiction will always have its fair share of critics.
I did have a woman come up to me at a bookstore once. I was signing stock. This is just a regular woman, and she said, oh, you're Nora Roberts. You write that smut.
I was at an autographing one time, and somebody came up and picked up my book and said, oh, you write those kind of books. And my immediate reply was, what, no pictures?
And I said, I do not write smut, and that is incredibly rude. What's wrong with you?
Romance fiction has been stamped with many labels. Frothy bodice ripper.
Ooh.
Twitlet. Supermarket trash.
Oh, yeah.
Porn for women. It seems that popularity may not always translate into acceptance, especially when it comes to matters of sex.
We being in a cultural we there, are uneasy with the idea of women becoming aroused or reading a story that might arouse them.
What the culture tends to do is latch onto the sex in the books and ignore all the rest that goes with it, which is generally a relationship. The women in these stories have families and problems and all the other stuff that goes along with life.
And like many things in our culture, things that are of most interest to women can be denigrated in a lot of ways.
A friend of mine, when I asked her what she was reading, she said, "Oh, it's just trash."
My son's in grade 12, and his English teacher, when I mentioned that I read romance, she said, "Oh, well, I guess you don't like to have to deal with reality."
And it turned out it was Nora Roberts' new bestseller.
Our bodies moving to the sound, the rhythm of the beats.
They can be naughty or they can be nice, but no romance novel is complete without them.
I really like plausibility. It can't happen too soon, it can't happen too fast, and not too much talking.
But I did a book called Secrets of the Night, where essentially the heroine kidnaps the hero. Well, she rescues him because he's lying drugged in a ditch. But she's looking for somebody to father a child on her, and she propositions him for stud duty. So when they actually have sex, it's this very strange, unnatural situation of two strangers. And that was a totally different kind of scene. It has to be.
After you've read 500 novels, it's like, okay, here we go, stars bursting, fireworks. But when there's a surprise, that gets my attention.
Many of our stories, it's the man and the woman and the man, or it's the vampire and the woman, or it's the werewolf and the man, or it's the alien, because they're fantasies and people love that. But it doesn't matter if it's a threesome, it still can be a very romantic relationship.
Love scenes are as varied as the thousands of romance authors writing them. But while some keep sex behind closed doors, others leave the door wide open.
Sex is a natural part of any loving relationship. And as far as romance novels go, it's actually a plot point.
Catherine Smith has a reputation for being a sexy, emotional writer with bite.
Oh, I remember being 7 years old and seeing Frank Langella play Dracula and falling instantly in love with this creature. And I thought there's nothing more tortured than a vampire hero, and I do so love to torture my heroes.
Catherine's novel, Be Mine Tonight, is set in late Victorian England. The story follows a vampire who falls in love with a terminally ill woman while searching for the Holy Grail.
I think what I bring to the paranormal romance genre is a deep, abiding love for mixing the disturbing and the arousing, if that even makes any kind of sense. And I think that's what I like to do. I think I like to try and play around with people's comfortable areas and add some things that people, and maybe even readers, might not be so entirely comfortable with, but they like the character so much that they'll go along with it anyway.
Everything about her wept life and hope and a sense of desperation that called to him. She looked so fragile, he longed to protect her. So delicate, he wanted to shelter her. And so damn tempting that he wanted to sink his fangs into her, just to know the bittersweet tang of life once more.
Writing those all-important love scenes is a big part of a romance writer's job. But contrary to popular belief, there's no how-to manual on writing them. And most writers agree that the key to a good love scene is emotion.
I get comments, why don't you write more sex in your books? Well, to me, the love scene, and it's not a sex scene, it is a love scene, should come when you have gotten to the point where this commitment means something. It's not just a physical exercise.
The motion, the technique, it's pretty much the same for everybody. Slot A, tab B, pretty much the same. So it really is about what these two people feel for each other, how they change each other, what they're feeling inside, the emotion of the physicality.
Because the whole point of the book is to reach a point where you're dedicated to each other for life. And the physical part has to be part of that dedication.
Kelly Boyce is working on a romance set in early 19th century England. Desire and Brimstone is about a young woman forced to marry a man with a questionable past.
I think when you are writing the love scene, it's very easy to get into the head of the characters because you've been in their heads for the whole story, so you know what their emotions are, you know what they're feeling. So to get into their head for the love scene, you're probably already there.
Passion that burns, a blue flame so bright, undying, brilliant, and hot, never wavering.
I'm so excited about the story, and the whole thing is just like flowing so naturally that it's just like coming out, and I'm not really doing a whole lot of editing as I'm writing. I'm just like kind of spitting it out. Yeah. I think a lot of people who know me and who have known me for a long time find out that I write romance. Their first impression is, you? I'm not cynical, I'm very sarcastic. I kind of have a dry sense of humor, and I probably don't outwardly have a romantic bone in my body. But I don't think it's romance I'm writing. I think it's relationships.
And that scene that you wrote, the little encounter in the
library
scene.
scene.
Very hot. I'm fanning myself.
Good. That was the intention.
Isabel allowed herself to be gathered into his arms and pulled against him. His strong chest provided a warm and familiar welcoming. A hint of sandalwood drifted around her, mixed with a musky male scent all his own. She remembered it from before, remembered what it represented, a safe haven. How odd to find such comfort in the embrace of the one man the Ton feared above all, the one they called the Devil Duke.
While romance fiction has been getting steamier in recent years, it's forever faithful to the happy ending. Erotica, on the other hand, delivers sizzling sex scenes, but no guarantee of a happily ever after.
There's definitely the battle between me, the romance writer, and me, the erotic writer. It's just that I've never written as explicitly before. And I think it could jar some of my readers. I'm worried that my readers are going to say, whoa, Kayla, this is too much. I don't want to lose any readers. But by the same token, I often will ask my readers, do you guys really like it hotter? Because I keep hearing that, hotter, hotter, hotter. And they'll always tell me, make it hotter.
Kayla Perrin's book, Getting Even, is set in modern-day Atlanta. It follows the stories of 3 women who plot revenge on the men who wronged them.
And I always pondered, will this be a good spice book? Mm-hmm. And it was one of the things I somewhat wrestled with because I didn't want to compromise story, but personally I'm really happy with how it turned out because I think there's great sex and great story.
Absolutely. Well, we're thrilled. I think women from all walks of life and all sort of social strata can relate to. I think everyone has been through heartache before.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone has been in a bad relationship or been jilted by a guy.
Exactly.
And I mean, who can't relate to the theme of wanting to get even with somebody?
Exactly.
It's something that you just know when you read it. I mean, people can write sex scenes and have it not do a single thing for you. It doesn't get, the blood flowing. Someone else can write it in such a way that it really hits the mark. And it's really all in the execution. It's not just the words put down on paper, it's how they're written.
I mean, it's one thing to write romance. It's another thing to push the envelope and say, this is as real as it can get in the bedroom.
They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, but if you ask me, that's a load of bull. Hands down, that gold-lined path travels through his libido. I should know. Right now, I'm practically dying of embarrassment as I sit in a North Atlanta restaurant with the man of my dreams, Adam Hart. I'm trying to look nonchalant beside him in our booth, sipping a margarita through a straw, while Adam has his hand between my legs.
I like smart-mouthed heroines.
Oh, look at me, I'm so buff, macho type guy. I like that.
You give me chills each time I see you. My heartbeat quickens chest. Nobody's ever made me feel this.
Every year, aspiring and published romance writers, along with publishers, agents, and editors from across North America and around the world, gather for a conference about all things romance. Organized by the Romance Writers of America, it features wall-to-wall book signings, famous author appearances, rowdy workshops, fabulous parties, and high-powered pitching. With 9,500 members, the RWA is the only major romance writers association in North America. But less than 1/5 of its members are actually published. The rest, like Kelly Boyce, just have a dream.
Oh, yeah. I'm starving for this. This is just pretty much my sole goal in life, is to be published and to make a living off of it. That's pretty much what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Hold me, baby, hold me close to you. 'Cause nobody makes life the way you do. Hold me, baby, hold me.
Kelly is about to take her first stab at pitching her manuscript. But will it make a mark with Avon editor Kelly Harms?
There's a huge competition for, only a few spots, but that's nothing I can control. The only thing I can control is what I put out there, and that's pretty much where my focus is. Brimstone, it's a single title historical that takes place in 1822 England. Okay. And I'll just kind of read you the premise here so I don't screw it up if I try to memorize. Cynical Devlin Kane, the Duke of Avantgarde, needs an heir. The last beautiful widow, Isabel Camden, spent the last 8 years in a loveless marriage. She wants to remarry, but she dreams or will she find herself consigned to another loveless union to save her son?
So you have a widow.
I do.
Did Julia tell you that I always complain when there are widows?
No.
But that's okay. But the first thing I always send her or any of my pros back to do is to try to envision the book with the virgin.
Ever since historical romances took off in the 1970s, the Virgin has reigned supreme, and it doesn't look like she's giving up her crown just yet.
The virginal heroine, which, just leaps off the shelf sometimes.
Right.
And we don't know why, but people just love to read about that. And you've told me the setup for a very solid standalone. Mm-hmm. There is nothing that ties us into the next book. It all comes down to the writing, which I would love to see.
Great.
So send it to me, and it's great to meet you.
Thanks
for coming in.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I was nervous at first because I can't memorize things, so I was reading it off the paper, which felt a little stupid, but at least it came out coherent.
The book is exactly what an Avon romance should be, except it's missing that sparkle.
She doesn't like widows very much.
And I have yet to hear how that sparkle is going to come through.
Overall, it was a really good experience.
Did she come to me with a hook that I couldn't stop thinking about and I'm just dying to read? No.
Romance writers may write about love, but this business is not for the faint of heart.
There are very few writers who can support themselves. Romance writers are one of the few places where a lot of the writers can't support themselves with their writing.
This is not an easy occupation. You have to really want this.
The temptation is to say, I'm just going to sit in my room and I'm going to write wonderful books and everyone will recognize them. The truth is that doesn't happen. It doesn't matter whether you're reading literary fiction, you're writing mysteries, or anything else. It's not going to happen.
Success in this extremely competitive business is no fluke. For writers that have made it big, their recipe is a potent mix of talent and savvy self-promotion. It's not just about writing a good book, it's about selling it.
I think I'm very good at what I do because I've got where I am quite quickly by paying attention to the business side.
How did I get to the top? One reader at a time, one book at a time. By knowing my audience, by giving them the stories I know they want to read.
I think I went from 4-figure advances to a 6-figure advance, and I turned around and went, clear everything. It's a brand new life, and I paid off all my bills and knew I was, not going to be on the street.
a new romance author can expect to make less than a mortgage payment for her first book. Mid-list authors might be able to afford a used car, provided that they write more than one book a year. A top-selling romance author can pay off her house, buy a brand new car, and finally take that Caribbean cruise. It's no cliche. Making it big takes hard work. Catherine Smith is taking a page from the bestsellers. She's stepping away from her computer and onto the front lines of promotion, the bookstore. She's meeting with Sue Grimshaw, romance buyer for Borders Group, a large bookstore chain with hundreds of stores around the world.
Being a Canadian and now living in Connecticut, it's been career-wise, it's been a great move. But there's also been a little bit of adjusting to do because the fiction market is just so much bigger down here. And from a business perspective, I really think I need to work on self-promotion and getting myself out there and making myself known to more readers and more booksellers.
Now you're saying you're going into paranormal.
Paranormal. So let's just try this on the shelf and see. There. Oh, look how nice it fits in there.
Yeah, you know, that's a great cover. Every Monday when I come into the office, I go through, my whole day is spent going through our sales and seeing what sold the previous week. I break it down not only by book, but also by subgenre to see what's continuing to trend well, see what's selling differently. The paranormal category has just been on the increase. Over the last 2 years, we've seen 30% increases each year, so it's really been growing. And, you know, there's really no end in sight either. I think authors have been very good at keeping their stories diversified, so there's always something new. Even though we have another new paranormal book, it's something different. I also look in some of the other fiction genres to see what they're doing well. Paranormal obviously has a crossover audience, and that's one of the reasons why it is selling so well, is because we are attracting another reader from the sci-fi market. Some of the things some of the authors do are the bookmarks. And Cressley Cole has a new book that's out actually this month called Hunger Like No Other, and she sent out bookmarks to our romance expert stores and had them placed within the section, and that is something else that the readers enjoy picking up and having.
So you
on
actually
hand.
have stores that are romance experts?
Yes, we do.
Is this list of stores available to authors?
Absolutely.
So this is something I should be doing.
Yeah.
Sending promotional to
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Okay. I'm certainly not anywhere near the ranks of, say, Nora Roberts or Lisa Kleypas or Stephanie Lawrence. I have a way to go before that happens.
You know, you would be placed within this section as well, so I think that's.
And in terms of real estate, this is what, the Hamptons?
This is where you want to be. Exactly. This is where you want to be.
Everyone's reading #1 New York Times best-selling author Nora Roberts. Well, almost everyone.
Someone's got to write them.
If there's one name synonymous with success in romance, it's Nora Roberts. Her career is what romance authors like Catherine Smith, Kayla Perrin, and Kelly Boyce dream of.
I like to work. If someone said, if you had a fantasy that you could go anywhere, where would you like to be? And I would say, at home. I'd rather be home than anywhere.
Nora Roberts has sold over 295 million books worldwide under her own name and under her pen name, J.D. Robb.
My publisher called me once, Nora, in her New York accent. Nora, I need a hobby. I don't want a hobby. I don't want a hobby. Ew. I want to write. So my agent said, a pseudonym. And I said, I don't want one. Because I don't want somebody else's name on my book. I'm proud of it. I want my name on it. And 2 years, we batted this back and forth. And then she said to me, my clever agent, Nora, there's Pepsi, there's Diet Pepsi, and there's caffeine-free Pepsi. And I said, oh, light goes off. It's marketing. And I could be two popular brands.
Since 1999, every book published under the Nora Roberts name has been a New York Times bestseller.
You certainly need a very energetic, supportive, interested publisher. You need booksellers who get excited about your work. You hope for a good cover, but you can't control any of that. The only thing you can control as a writer is what's between the pages.
If you line up all the Nora Roberts books sold, they would stretch across the United States from Los Angeles to New York City 10 times.
It can be really hard, as someone once said to me, to please all your masters. It's easier in that sense if you're writing for one publishing house. But, on the other hand, no one has stepped up and said, hey, Kayla, here's like a super fabulous contract that I can feel safe writing one book for one publishing house for 1 year or whatever, and not worry that if that tanks, I'm going to lose my house.
Kayla Perrin has landed a 3-book deal with Harlequin's Spice line. But she's hoping for a more long-term commitment. She's anxious to talk to her LA-based agent, Helen Breitweiser, about her future with Harlequin.
Hello?
Helen.
Kayla.
I just got the flowers. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
They're beautiful.
I hope they're very spring-like.
Oh yes, very spring-like. I love them.
Celebrate a new deal.
Yes, it's fabulous. Thank you. It's such a nice
Welcome.
touch. You think that Harlequin can reach that audience that's beyond the chick lit, beyond romance, and into the mainstream?
Yes. Right now, that's what Harlequin is doing.
Okay.
And you've got the publisher, you've got the editorial director, and you've got an editor, who are reading your books and who are excited to promote you and are having meetings with their sales force and marketing people just about you.
I have some chosen stills from our photo shoot. Those are very small, but we narrowed it down to this image, which is now with
The jewelry really
Yeah.
Can her name be bigger on the second book a little bit?
There is room to make it bigger, and I think given that...
Yeah, I think just by function of moving it up,
It certainly makes
will
it more
definitely give it more
confident.
presence, but I'm wondering if we can maybe bump up the size of her name a little bit.
Absolutely.
I have to see it laid out and see what we think,
Right,
but
sure.
maybe
There's
something to
definitely
think about.
space to do that. We can,
Maybe to try.
I'm finding that I'm more competitive than I thought, especially as an African American writer. So I don't know. I want to be a trailblazer, I guess, in some ways. I never thought that of myself, but I realize it now.
Nobody's ever made me feel this way. Captive to the spell of your...
After a long day at work, coming home, doing groceries, making supper, helping kids with the homework, reading romance makes me go, oh, I kind of want that. You sit down and you go, I need a romance.
Nobody makes love the way you do.
Really, Mary, if you'd read it, it would have changed your life. I swear to God.
I was researching my dissertation on the differences in the way men and women write fiction. And in order to do that, I had to read romance novels. So I went to a used bookstore and said, give me 100 romance novels. For 30 days, I had read 100 stories where a woman had a problem, she struggled, and she won. And years of academia had told me a woman had a problem, she struggled, and she lost. By the end of the month, I was Women Hear Me Roar. I got out. I felt I could do anything. And it was such a huge change. It had to be the books.
Jennifer Cruzy is not alone in how she feels about the romance novel. Others agree that romance gives women a lot more than just a happy ending.
I had entered the business at a time when romance was taking off in the early 80s. And I really believed in the books because I felt they took a feminist message that at that time was being debated on a very high level and brought it home to women in the Midwest who had kids and were living a real life. So, the early Silhouette Desires were saying to those women at the first time, you can have a job, you can have an orgasm, you're entitled to have a husband who you have a real relationship with. And I thought it was a very effective way to enrich people's lives that way.
I know the stereotype is that, romances are just about women being, waiting to be rescued, but that's not how they are at all. They're women and men sort of breaking the rules, going out, getting what they want in life, and ending up very happily as a result.
And often the heroine rescues the hero as much as he rescues her.
People say, oh, romance novels, they're rape novels, they're escapist fantasy. Women read them because they're sick of the kids and their husband and they want to escape to another world. And that's not it at all. These are stories about 5'2" girls with long red hair who wrap these 6-foot hunky pirates around their little fingers. They're empowerment fantasies.
Another part of the power is the reader at the end of a romance feels joy, and so feels hopeful herself. Not in a one-to-one sort of way, but certainly overall, you feel just more optimistic when you've finished a romance novel. Like maybe your own choices are either more available or more possible.
Once upon a time, there were 3 women, and they believed in happy endings.
If the business is going one way, the business is just going to have to go that way because I'm going, my own way. I can only write a book that I love and that I feel passionate about. Anything else is going to come out sounding flat, which means I'd be wasting my time and it would never get published anyway. So I think in the end, a good book is a good book, and a good book will find a home.
In 5 years' time, I want to be a New York Times bestseller on the main list, not the extended list. No, I would like to be within that top 10 on the New York Times. So that's my lofty goal for the next 5 years.
I want my books to be as readily available for the average consumer to pick up and buy as all the big names. That's what I want. Is that too big? It's a goal. I don't think it's too big.
Looking for love, looking for romance, languid, deliciously hot, hot and steamy, eyes meeting eyes, lips touching lips, time standing still when we kiss, soft and dreamy. Counting the moments when we'll be together again. Minutes stretching out like hours. Stomach is turning, emotions